What's going on, everybody, and welcome to another video. So in today's video we're going to be doing an install on my 2018 STI of these AEM X series gauges. So I got 4 of them from AEM, and I also got a 5th gauge that's going to be Innovate. It's a gas it's an ethanol percent gauge to monitor your gas mixture. I'm getting ready to do E85 on this car. Dude, I am so nervous to record. If you guys can't tell, I'm not good at this. Anyways, I'm gonna do my best to show you guys how I do this, where I route this, how I connect everything. So this might not be a short video, but that's okay. You guys can skip through it. I will clarify right now that I am not a master electrician. I have in the past ruined some things. So I'll be honest, I have fried a boost gauge and a radar detector in the past when I tried to hardwire it. But this was back when I didn't know what I was doing. I was just connecting wires. I wasn't really checking the proper wire. And that's what happens. Hold on, this dog wants to join the business. Wants to help out a little bit. So in this video, I'm actually gonna go by the book. I'm gonna try to do everything properly. I'm not telling you guys to do it this way. I'm just showing you guys that this is how I am doing it. The way we're gonna connect power is gonna be with fuse taps. So let me show you that right here. I'm gonna be using 3 of these. I'm gonna connect 2 gauges on 1 fuse tap, and then the 5th gauge is gonna be on its own. So right here I purchased, I believe this is the JCS or the JSC tripod pillar for the 2018 STI. This is a very nice piece, very heavy duty. They construct this out of the OEM pillar, so it's not some flappy little plastic piece. It's very heavy duty. Then for the remainder 2 gauges, we're gonna be installing that into the dual gauge cluster pod. This is by SMY Performance, I believe. Now this one's, I mean, it's still pretty good material. Pretty thick plastic. It's not as heavy duty as this one. I'm not sure. They probably don't make this out of OEM material, but nonetheless, this is a pretty good pod right here, and I know a lot of people that go with this, so that's why I chose this dual gauge pod. So let me just put these 2 aside and let me show you guys what gauges I ordered. Let me open them all up. All right, so starting from left to right, I'm going to show you guys exactly what gauge I bought and what other things I might have purchased to make the install go a little bit more smoothly. So right here we have the Aem Oil Temperature Gauge. This could be used for various things such as your coolant temperature, your transmission, or your oil temperature. I'm using this for the oil temperature. As you guys can see, it comes with the water, the black water faceplate. I don't want that, so I went ahead and purchased the second little kit that comes with it, a bunch of different various faceplates for the car, and it has the oil gauge that I need. Along with this, we're going to be installing this sensor inside the oil pan, and to do that we went ahead and bought this little adapter from Killer B Motorsports. This just replaces your oil drain bolts with this one, and that way you can screw in a sensor in the middle. Now I am only doing this for the meantime. Later I will order a Killer B oil pan pickup and baffle, and then I will put the sensor inside of that oil pan. So this is going to be temporary. So moving on, we got the exhaust gas temperature. So for this gauge we're going to have to install a bung into my headers. So right where the 4th cylinder is, we're going to go ahead and install a bung right there. We're going to tap the header, weld the bung on there, and then that way we can go ahead and screw the sensor in there. So that's how that's getting installed. Right here for the oil pressure, there's 2 oil galleys that are on the engine that you could use. There's one in the back, and then there's one underneath the alternator. I'm going to go ahead and use the alternator one. Various people and on forums say that that's the best one to use. It has the most accurate pressure readings just because of the way that the rear oil galley is set up. Something about a passageway that splits, so that way the oil pressure is not as accurate over there. So if I was you guys, I would definitely install the oil pressure gauge right down there into the oil galley that's underneath the alternator. Now the way that I'm going to be doing this is utilizing this, I think this is a P&L oil sender unit, just to extend it. Basically this will screw in to where the current sensor is right now, and then it will come out, so that way we can go ahead and get the sensor in there without having any clearance issues with the alternator. On top of that, I purchased this little piece off of eBay. Hopefully this will let me utilize the OEM sensor that goes up to 2 psi, so I can just keep my dummy light. Basically one of these will be utilized by my P&L oil pressure sender extender, and then this will be the OEM sensor right here, so that way we don't delete that sensor. So there's that. Next we got the air fuel ratio gauge. This will just go right inside of my downpipe. So if you guys know the NVIDIA downpipes, they have an extra O2 bung at the top of them. That's where we're going to go ahead and install the air fuel ratio sensor. That one's going to be taken care of. And then this is the Innovate ethanol percent gauge. That's what it looks like. And this will just get installed into the fuel lines. And all of this is going to get powered with fuse taps, and hopefully we can route this and make it look nice. So I'm going to be doing two parts. One is going to be the tri-pillar. I'm going to install those 3 gauges in one video, and then the next video is going to be my dual gauge pod cluster, and I'm going to install those 2 gauges separately in a different video. What I'm going to be doing in this video is going to be the oil temperature, oil pressure, and air fuel ratio. And then in the next video, we're going to do the exhaust gas temperature and the Innovate fuel ethanol percent gauge. If you guys are interested in seeing how I go about installing all of this, stay tuned because we're about to get right into it. Alright, so the first thing to do, obviously before doing anything electrical on a vehicle, you got to disconnect the battery. Very important. It's going to help you from frying some stuff. Alright, you guys, well, let's begin. Let's start opening up some of these things, taking out the harnesses. Comes with a little adapter for your oil galley already. That's cool. And then the actual sensor right here. So this is the main stuff we're going to need. Just going to take this gauge pod off. Now, I have installed some gauges before. I did it on the 2013 WRX just a few weeks back. And the issue that I ran into when I was doing that is these harnesses were not long enough. They were not reaching the sensor from the location of the gauge pod. So what I had to do was get the power and ground, and I had to extend them with some other wires. So most likely we're gonna have to do that with a lot of these gauges as well. So be prepared to get some other wires and having to extend it. So let's go ahead and connect the oil pressure with the air fuel ratio, and they're going to be fuse tapped together. So here's the air fuel ratio gauge right here. Now this looks like we got plenty, so we won't have to extend the air fuel ratio, thankfully. Also comes with a bung that you can weld on if you need to. And that's about everything we're going to need right there. Alright, you guys, so now what we have to do is connect the power and the ground to these gauges. So we're only going to be utilizing the red and the black wires on each of these. All these other wires go to different things that we do not need, or I'm not going to be using. So you guys can just cut these off and make sure they're not touching anything. Tape them away and put them off to the side. Do that on both of these. So you can get rid of those two, and we're only going to be using these two. So we're going to put the 2 blacks together and the 2 reds together, and then we're going to put this onto my fuse tap, and then we're going to put this onto ground. So I'm going to attach a little piece right here that we can put a bolt through it, and that's going to be our ground. Now I want to guarantee that I have enough length here to reach my gauge pod and to where I'm going to fuse tap this. Like I said, in the WRX I had a lot of issues with the length of the wires, so just to be safe I'm going to go ahead and extend these. I'm going to put these 2 together, and then I'm going to extend this with a different wire, and then I'm going to fuse tap it there. So we got the 2 harnesses right here. We need the black and the red. The black goes to ground. So right here I went ahead and put the 2 wires together. I extended the wire just to give me some more room, and then I went ahead and attached one of these ends to it so we could put a bolt through it and get our ground connected. Next we got this power wire, the 2 power wires together. Again, we extended it and connected it to the fuse tap. Now they originally come with one of these adapters. I don't like those, the connections are not that strong. So I went ahead and cut it off, and then I soldered them together. But anyways, all you have to do now is just put some tape around all of those connections, tape all this together, make it look nice, and then you can go ahead and install that into a fuse location. I'm going to do one more of these gauges. I need to wire up one more because we're doing the 3. Alright, once again, after this is all taped, this is what it should look like. You have your 2 harnesses, comes out like this, then you got your ground and your power. And obviously you got to put a fuse in here, and then the fuse that you replace it with right there. Let's go ahead and do the other set. Now we're going to do the same thing that we did with that one, but we're going to do it with the oil temperature. And all right, there we have it. Taped off right there and right there. So this one's also all good to go. All right, so the wiring for all 3 of these gauges is set up. We can go ahead and plug it into the fuse box right now and verify that they are receiving power, everything's working properly, before we go ahead and continue and actually wire everything up. All right, so we're going to begin by taking out this side panel right here. Stick a flathead in there and just pry this off like so. Now there's going to be a Phillips. You want to unscrew this guy. All right, after you guys got that bolt out, let me just take some of the stuff out of the way really quickly. Now, you guys would be able to remove this little piece right here separate from all of this if you guys pull it correctly. So just kind of pull like that, and then you should get this little piece to come off. There's clips right down here. Now, I'm just gonna go ahead and disconnect all this stuff just so it's not in the way. Try to give you a good angle on all of these clips so you guys can see how to do it. So you gotta push this one in right here. Then you gotta push this guy in right here. Let me actually try to using a flathead. It's a little easier that way. There we go. Now we've got the sides on this guy. And there we go. So once you guys got all that disconnected, try not having it drop like that. All right, now that you guys got this disconnected, we have good access to this fuse box, and this is where we're going to be using the fuse tab. And then one of these bolts around here is where we're going to do the ground. So let's go ahead and grab all of our harnesses, plug them all in, and let's go make sure everything works. We're going to be using this fuse right here and the 10 right here. So this one goes to my cigarette lighter, and this is my navigation. So we're going to tap into these two right here. Now, one thing to note, you want to make sure this fuse is always lower than the one you're tapping into. So we're going to pull this guy out, we're going to put him in here, and then we're going to plug that in. And then we're going to do the same thing with this guy. So this is a 5, this is a 7.5. It doesn't matter what kind you have, as long as they're lower than the one up here. All right, so I went ahead and grabbed my fuse puller. Let's grab this 10 amp fuse right here, pull it out. Now we're going to go ahead and just tap into one of these guys. There we go. Then we just plug it right back in. And there's one setup right here. And we'll set up this ground in just a second once we do this one. So same deal, let's grab this 10 amp fuse right here. Now we're gonna put it in the top port. Sometimes these can be a little hard to get in there. There we go, now we just plug it right back where we just took it out from. So there we go, now the two fuse taps are plugged in. We just have to set up the ground. We can actually layer these together and put them under the same bolt. Now we just have to make sure we find a good ground source. Now I'm gonna go ahead and see if it will fit around this little bolt right here, and I think this would be perfect. All right, moment of truth. Perfect. There we go, get that on there nice and tight. Now we can connect the battery back up, power this up into accessory mode, and let's see if these three power up. That's a good sign. Look at that. So they all got power. That is perfect. Now the reason they say this is just sensor is because it's not detecting a sensor right now, and that's because there's no sensor plugged in. So all right, you guys, it's looking good. Everything's powered up. Now we just have to route all these wires, put this into the gauge pod, and make it all look nice. And then we got to wire up all the sensors to each gauge. All right, now there is something I wanted to mention about this this tripod that I got for my pillar. Look how small these holes are for the wires to go through. Like, it will have no problem for the wires to go through it, but if you guys remember, let me show you. The way to tie these down was to put it around here, and then you have to come from the back of the gauge to tighten it down, right? Well, I can't do that because of how small that hole is, and I'm not about to cut it even bigger. So what I've decided to do, so this is what it's gonna look like, and if you put it in here, it's kind of a snug fit. If it's not loose, it's like, it's not gonna come out. So I'm either thinking about just putting them in like that and not doing anything to them, or super gluing them. That's a permanent solution, but what if one of these breaks? It's gonna be a pain to take it out. So I'm thinking I'm just gonna put them in there with no glue, nothing, and then if one of them ends up falling out, I'm gonna try to figure out a better way for them to be in there more snug. But I think that's just what I'm gonna do, and then I'm gonna route the wire right through here and down, or down my pillar. Let's go ahead and start putting this together, putting all the wires in here, and then putting it up into my pillar. So obviously this is gonna entail me having to take off this pillar right here. And if you guys remember, just give it a little tug, and then there's gonna be that green clip. Not sure if you see it, but you gotta spin it. There we go. And I forgot, you have to actually take off this tweeter cover. So let me go ahead and get a little flathead for that. Then you wanna go ahead and peel it up like so. There we go. And now this whole pillar can come out like so. I'm about to disconnect this battery again because it is super annoying. So here's the comparison between the stock pillar and then the one that I purchased from JCS or JSC Pods. They use the OEM pillar, so it's very heavy duty. It's nice. It even comes with the clips that is needed. So let's go ahead and start wiring all of our wires through here, make it look nice, and then let's go ahead and slap this guy in. I'm just trying to decide what order I want to have these gauges. I think at the very top, I'm gonna have air-fuel ratio, I'm gonna have oil pressure, and then oil temperature right here. So oil pressure will be this middle guy right here. Since this is not permanent, I'm able to pull this off later and change the faceplate. There's actually one more wire that we need to plug into this before we actually put everything back up. So let me go grab that. So this harness that actually plugs into the sensor, we're gonna need to go ahead and grab and also snake it through the pillar and connect it to the air-fuel ratio gauge. And so there we go, that's what it's gonna look like. All the wires are hooked up to the back of these gauges. Now my job is to snake all of this stuff inside of here and up the pillar and make it look nice and neat. I think I'm gonna go ahead and do that off camera because it's just gonna be a lot of finagling with these wires. But then after I'm done, I'm gonna show you guys how I ended up routing all of this stuff and where I put it all. All right, so quick update on where we're at so far. So I went ahead and put the gauges inside, put the pillar up. It's kind of what it's looking like right here so far. The wires, I went ahead and tucked all the wires kind of in the back, zip tied them back there, try to make it look clean, because we still need to have room over here for the next two that we're gonna put right here. But we'll do that in another video. So all of these wires that are coming out right here, these are all the, what am I recording? Okay, so all these wires right here coming out, these are all the wires that need to connect to the sensors. So these are the wires that we need to snake through the firewall or somehow to get to the engine bay. So that's our next step now. I'm gonna go ahead and connect the battery right now and double check that everything's still working because of all the wires that I've been tugging on and stuff, make sure nothing came loose. So let's do that really quick. Okay, so let's double check. Okay, looking good. So perfect, they work like they should. They turn on when accessory is on. They turn off when accessories turns off. Just what we need. Now we can go ahead and start connecting all of our sensors. And I need to figure out how I'm gonna get this into the engine bay. These are all the wires that we have to connect to the sensors. And let me show you how long they are and what problem we are facing. So this one goes to the air fuel ratio. This one's fine. This one's just long enough. I think we will make do with how long this is. It should reach no problem with the way we're gonna route this. But these two, this is to my oil pressure and my oil temperature. These are not long enough, as you guys can see. No matter how I route these, they will not reach. So I will have to extend those. I'm gonna have to do some more soldering. That was to be expected though, because I had to do the same thing on the WRX. Now the way that I plan on routing this, so I was looking throughout the engine bay, I'm looking at possible locations to tap in through the firewall. I decided on going through the fender, which is the same thing I did on the WRX. It's just basically by the pedals, there's a little grommet. It comes up through this fender right here. We'll go ahead and route all the wires the way we need to. One's gonna go down here. One wire's gonna route down here, over there, and then into the oil pan at the bottom of the engine. And if you guys would like a detailed video on the WRX gauges, I can do that. I did not record an install video for that because that was my first time really getting into it and looking at how to do this properly. So I wanted to make sure I got that down, everything was working good and the way it should. And it is. So now I'm doing it on the STI and I'm gonna show you guys how I'm doing it. So now what we gotta do, I'm gonna jack up the car, take off this wheel. We're gonna go ahead and take out this plastic wheel well cover underneath, and then this right here. This will give us access to put the wires in and puncture that grommet. All right, guys, now that we got the wheel off, we got to take off all of these clips and take off the fender liner. Jack out of the way now. I grab that last clip right here, and this whole fender liner should come out like so. So as you guys can see, that is the grommet that we are going to tap into. I'm going to show you guys what it looks like from the inside. It's just kind of dark, so hard to show you. But anyways, we're going to route all of our wire harnesses through that grommet, in through the fender well, and then up into the engine bay, except two of them. We're going to do the exhaust gas temperature, is just going to come from here and then down into my header. And oil temperature is going to come from here down into my oil pan. Everything else is going to go up. So I'm going to show you guys where the grommet is from the inside so you guys can see. I'll do my best. It's very hard to show you. So the grommet is right there. I'm not sure if you guys can see, but look for this big white plug, and it's going to be right there up top. There's a big wire harness that goes right through it. You'll be able to see. That's the one that we're going to be tapping into. All right, guys, so while I'm at it, I went ahead and took the clips off of this. So we can take this off too. Now hopefully this doesn't require me to take my fender off, that'd be annoying. There we go. So just slide this thing out, get it out of the way. And there we go, we have access. That's just what we want. We're gonna have the wires come out here, try to make them look as nice and neat as possible. So you guys can do it however you guys would like. That's the way I'm gonna route the wires. There's different grommets throughout the firewall that you guys can tap into, but it's just gonna be a little bit harder from the other side to get the wires. So that's why I just chose that one. It worked out on the WRX, so I'm gonna do it on the STI. So let's get it done. So as you guys can see right there, I went ahead and cut a little hole. Well, a big hole, I should say. Reason being is because obviously this air fuel ratio connector is pretty big to stake through, and I don't want to have trouble or yanking on that guy. And I have a lot of wires that I need to stake through. So how big or small that hole is totally up to you guys. You don't have to make it that big. You can make it smaller. You can make just a slit if you want, but you're gonna have a harder time getting all those wires through. So if you want to save the trouble, just go ahead and cut a bigger hole and get all those wires through that. Another quick tip, you guys can put a metal wire through that hole and then tape all the wires to it and then pull it through, or like zip ties or something. So that's exactly what I'm gonna do, so I don't have a hassle trying to find the hole. All right guys, so this is where we're at so far. I went ahead and got all 3 of these routed through for the tri-pillar pod that we're gonna be installing. So we got the air fuel ratio right here. I think this is the oil pressure and oil temperature, I think. As you guys can see, this is all the way snaked through as much wire as we have. This is as far as it goes. It won't even reach my oil pan. So these I will have to extend, while this air fuel ratio one is plenty long enough. So we got to focus on extending these 2 wires now before installing the sensors. Now be advised, I am not a master solderer. I'm just, I just do this every now and then. So I may or may not be doing this right. Do it however you know how to do it. This is how I'm gonna do it, and hopefully it works out for me. So let's get to it. First thing we're gonna do is cut the sensor off right here so we can extend it. Gonna get a good length going for myself. There we go. So we got these 2. So we grab our black and green wires. This is 18 gauge wire, if you guys are wondering. So we got those 2 ends stripped down. Put that off to the side. Let's get these ends stripped down as well. I'm also gonna use some of this shrink wrap that goes around the wires. Just gonna stick that on each one of these wires right here, like so. All right, now working one at a time, we're gonna do the green one first. Now here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna coat both of these wires with some of this solder, and then I'm gonna put them together. Now we're just gonna put the 2 wires together and melt that solder together. All right, there we go. After that's all soldered up, you can go ahead and slide up the little rubber piece we had here, cover this up, and heat it up. There we go, we got the green wire finished. Let's go ahead and do the black one now. Same thing. So there we go, all soldered up. Let's go ahead and get the little shrink wrap on there as well. So there we go, the connector is all finished. Now we gotta do the same thing with the other end and connect it to the wires that we just cut off. All right, so that's pretty much it. That's how we're gonna be soldering all these wires together. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish everything else off camera because it's just gonna take way too long. Once I've finished, I'm gonna get back and show you guys all my progress and how I got everything finished. So I'll be right back. All right, you guys, I finally got all of the sensors extended with the wires. I'm gonna show you what it looks like right here. So this right here is where they were cut. Try to make it look clean. Then they get extended, and I went ahead and plugged all the sensors in to get them ready to get tested. Make sure everything works. So all the sensors are plugged in. Air fuel. So if you guys remember last time, if you turn on the gauges without plugging in the sensor, they're just gonna say sensor, telling you that the sensor is not active or it cannot detect the sensor. So if that still says that, then one of these connections is not correct. So if one of these say sensor or they all do, then it's not working. But if they all say something else other than sensor, then everything is working properly and we can finally install these sensors. And that's a good sign right there, you guys. So all the sensors are working. Perfect. So now we just have to install everything. I think the hard part is finished, doing all the wiring. That's the worst part in my opinion. I hate doing all this, especially getting this wire through here. And if you guys remember the beginning of the video when I extended the wires to the power and ground, that's actually not required, not necessary. I did it just in case. because on the WRX I was having fitment issues and I had to actually extend one of those. So I went ahead and did it before I installed them just in case. But after installing it, I don't think you need to extend the power and ground. You only need to extend the actual sensor harness, which are these two right here. So right, let's go ahead and start taking things apart in the engine bay. We're gonna start taking apart the alternator right here. We're gonna take this off, take the alternator off. We'll be able to get to the oil galley, install the oil pressure sensor, which is actually gonna be installing all of these things right here. Next, we're gonna do the downpipe, do the air fuel ratio down there, and last but not least, we'll do the oil temperature at the very bottom in the oil pan. All right, so to begin, we're gonna do the AFR sensor first, which goes into the downpipe. So let's go ahead and get that one out of there. I believe the bung is a 17 millimeter. So I got my breaker bar and my 17 right here. And I'm gonna see if I can get this in there without having to take off any of my piping. So let's do this. I went ahead and got that loose. I'm taking it out right now. There we go, now we can screw the sensor in there. So this is the wideband sensor that I'm gonna be installing. It already looks like there's some kind of a thread locker or something on there. So I won't be putting any on that. But for all the other applications and things that I'm going to be installing, I will be adding a little bit of thread locker on all of the threads. So let's go ahead and screw this guy into the downpipe and then route the wire harness and try to make it look good. So I went ahead and threaded that sensor all the way in there, hand tight. You should be able to screw it all the way in with just your hands. If it's too hard or it's not going in easy, then you're not going in straight. Just keep trying, go back and forth until you get it right where you're able to screw it all the way down, just your hands. You do not want to strip that, you don't want to have any leaks right there, so just really do your best. I'm just going to get a tool and tighten that just a little bit more, and then we're going to route this harness and try to make it look pretty. So I went ahead and routed it all. That's where I punched it all up, got the bundle going. It's coming out from right there. Looks pretty good. So now moving on to removing this alternator cover and then the alternator. Let's get that oil galley plug out of there. All right, let's go ahead and take off this alternator cover right here. Now go ahead and grab a 12, and then we're gonna go ahead and start loosening this guy up first. Make sure not to lose the washer. Now go ahead and grab this guy right here. And you're able to wiggle this piece out as well. Now just go ahead and take off the belt and then try to get the alternator and twist it upwards. There we go, and just try to set it out of the way like so. Now that right there, that's the oil galley we're gonna plug into. This is the OEM sensor. This, once the oil pressure goes down to about 2 psi, this is when this one will tell you that you need to replace your engine pretty much at that point. So that's why I am putting an oil pressure sensor of my own in here so I could see when it's like 20, 30, everything, you know, not just 2. We're still gonna keep this. At least we're gonna try to with the little piece that I purchased. So let's see if this even works. Let's go ahead and unplug this and let's get the sensor out. So I'm not sure if this is the ideal camera angle, but we're gonna try this out. So get a 24 millimeter socket. That'll go right onto that sensor. Grab your breaker bar and do what the breaker bar is meant to do. Sensor is out. Now it is up to you whether or not you would like to put a new one of these in there or replace it. I'm gonna go ahead and keep this one because it doesn't leak and I like that and it's still decent shape. All right, so now that we got that sensor out, we're gonna be installing this little piece that I got off eBay. So that way I can keep my OEM sensor and then also use the aftermarket AEM X series. Before we install this, we need to put a little bit of this thread locker on there to coat it nice. We're gonna hand tighten this as hard as we can, and then we're gonna finish it off with the tool just a little bit because this is a tapered end that this piece comes with. It's tapered, so don't want to over tighten it. And I believe it's a 19. Now that should do it for me. I just want to spin it just so that way I can utilize this port right here. Now we can actually go ahead and grab this sensor once more and put some thread locker on there, some new stuff. Just like so. And then we're gonna thread this one into the top. So there we go, that is threaded in, that's tight. That's also threaded in tight. Now we're gonna grab this sensor and just slide it right back on. There we go, that's plugged in, operating. Now the next step in this install is gonna be connecting this. So I'm gonna be doing this in steps. I'm gonna be taking one piece off at a time, putting thread locker on there and screwing it in. There we go. Now I'm gonna go ahead and tighten that down as well. All right, so using a 13, I'm gonna go ahead and tighten this guy up. That should do it. Now we're gonna put a little bit of thread locker on this piece right here. And let's screw this guy in here. There we go. That is tight. All of this is tight and connected. Now this is where I want to have this come out. Right about here. All right, now that we have all of this connected, this is what it looks like. Give you guys a good look. Now we're gonna go ahead and try to put this alternator back. As you guys can see, that clearance is so perfect. Let me show you guys with the better light. So if you guys can see, that's the sensor, and it clears this alternator so good. Got this touching, it's perfect clearance, and then you got this little piece poking out, and that's where you actually connect your actual sensor. So let me just tie up this alternator, and then we'll put the sensor in. All right, so I am now buttoning up this alternator right here. Should be about right there. And you can always double check with the tightness of your belt. Should be able to do a half turn. Once you got that nice and tight, go ahead and tighten this guy down here as well. Nice and snug. Now we can also put this back on as well. Cool, and here we are. Here's where the sensor comes out. Go ahead and grab your sensor, grab some of that thread locker. Now screw the sensor into this. And also I'm gonna put some thread locker on here. Now let's tighten that up. So that's tightened. Now we want to get this sensor as well tightened down. All right, you guys, so I went ahead and stuck it right here. This is where the sensor comes out. You know, didn't really have to extend it too much. It was very close to reaching. But either way, I would have had to extend this. So yeah, all I have to do now is plug this in. So I'm just gonna route this wire behind there, also zip tie it, make it look nice, and then I'm gonna plug it in. And I also lost the cap to this in the meantime, fell into my engine bay. So bye-bye to that. All right, the air fuel ratio sensor is in, the oil pressure is in, routed right there, connected right there. That just got the wires coming out. Now we have one more sensor we have to do, and that is going to be, all right, now with the oil temperature, we just have to go and install this killer bee into the oil drain bolt. Replace this with that, and we're good to go. This is gonna be the easiest one yet. All right, you guys, and last but not least, we gotta do the oil temperature sensor. Really quickly, let's put some thread locker on there. All right, like so. You're gonna screw it in here. I'm gonna go ahead and tighten that down. It does come with a little gasket or washer. So now all I have to do is replace this with the oil drain plug. I'm not gonna record this part. My light just died. It's very dark under there. You're not gonna see much, but it's very simple. That's all you do is just replace this with the oil drain plug. I'm gonna go ahead and do that, and then I'll be right back. All right, so I went ahead and installed that sensor. I'm gonna give you guys a quick recap to show you what it looks like. So there we go, that's the sensor. Got my wires going right there, and it's just going up into the fender well. It's not the best wire management right here. We're gonna see how that holds up. I may or may not have to waterproof that a lot better, but I think it's decent right now, so just gonna keep it like that. I'm really tired. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this wheel back on, drop the car, and we're gonna go ahead and start her up, see if everything is reading properly. All right, you guys, so I finished buttoning everything up. As you guys can see, there's no obvious wires. Those are the only ones you can really see. All the sensors are installed. The tires back on, fender liner back on. Everything is buttoned up. I haven't started the car yet. I checked the oil. We're a little low on oil, and we're gonna be needing some oil for sure because I lost a little bit when I was replacing that sensor with the drain plug. I tried to do a quick swap. I haven't got my oil in yet that I ordered, so I might just go get a quart from the store just to top off after we start this, and then just for the meantime until I get my other oil in. So let's see if all the gauges work, all the sensors work. I'm only gonna start it for a little bit because I am low on oil. So let's do this. I actually have yet to button up all this stuff. I'm actually kind of nervous to see if everything works properly. Let me go check for leaks just in case, because you know how I feel about the leaks. They like to catch me all the time. Alright, took a quick glance to see if there was any obvious like leaks or anything like that, which there wasn't. Alright, so here we go for the first start. So I'm gonna have to possibly take this off again and try to put the wires in a specific way where it's not putting so much pressure, because over time this thing just keeps popping off. It's really annoying. But anyways, this stuff looks good. I'm about to pass out with the gas fume, so I'm gonna turn off the car now and then finish buttoning all of this stuff up right here. Well, there you guys have it. The gauges are fully installed. That's what my oil pressure is right. Oops, didn't mean to do that. That's good. I want the warning set at 18. That's what that means. So if it gets below 18, it's gonna start flashing. Oh, damn, I'm all over the place right now. This is my oil temperature. So we know that's working. It's steadily going up. And then my air-fuel ratio. Looking good. As you guys can see, it's popped out again. It's so annoying. I'm gonna need to do something about this. Well, anyways, that's gonna be it for this video, you guys. I am pretty beat. I'm gonna install these other two gauges here in a couple days, and then I'm gonna record that as well. It's gonna be the exhaust gas temperature, and then it's gonna be the Innovate ethanol percent, gas gauge. Also, here's a little sneak peek of the WRX gauges that I did install as well. Now the two cars are twinning. I'm gonna start this car for you guys as well, and you guys can see how these look. So this car is set up with oil pressure down here. This is gonna be actually coolant temperature. So we have this connected to the coolant, and then this is the air-fuel ratio. And that's just the way that I set this car up right here. I swear I have a tire pressure light on every car I have because I don't have sensors. Just that lazy. Anyways, if you guys are interested in a more in-depth video on these AEM X Series gauges on either one of these cars, let me know. I will be more than happy to make one for you guys. If you guys are still interested in watching me install the two gauges right here, this will be an upcoming video. I'm going to do it in a couple days. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hit that thumbs up button if you guys enjoyed this video. Subscribe for more content. and I'll see you guys in my next video. Have a good day. Peace out.